Hi, I'm Tori, and today I'm going to be discussing Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. This is the third book in the Stormlight Archive series, and I listened to the audiobook narrated by Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. I am going to be talking about all kinds of spoilers today, so if you have not read this book and all the ones before it, go get caught up and then come back to hear my opinions. So this book seemed very slow to me compared to the first two. The ending was great and all kinds of stuff was happening, but for most of the book, I had a really hard time getting into it. It just seemed like a lot of setup, a lot of watching characters think about things and kind of wander around, and it just seemed like the slowest book that I've read in the series so far. I will say, though, that the flashback sequence was my favorite. The first book, we flashed back to Kaladin's previous life, which taught us interesting things, but was miserable to sit through. The second book, we flashed back to Shallan's childhood, which taught us some interesting things that probably could have been summarized in about a chapter and was miserable to sit through, so I hated that. This book, seeing Dalinar's previous life, that really fascinated me. Seeing all the things he'd forgotten and why he forgot them, and then hearing that he didn't actually make a deal with the Night Watcher, it was with Cultivation herself, and just that whole thing. I loved seeing that. It was fascinating. They also did a really good job of showing that Dalinar and his first wife were a terrible match, and Navani and her first husband were a terrible match, and now that Dalinar and Navani are together, they have a much healthier, more open relationship where they can communicate to each other and feel supported and safe. And I'm just so happy for both of them, and I'm so glad that they get their happy ending even after all the terrible, terrible things that have happened to them. One of the things I did like from the beginning of this book was watching Kaladin go live with the Parshmen as he was traveling with them. That ended terribly for the Parshmen, of course, but it was really nice to see Kaladin really relating to these people and understanding where they were coming from. And then that scene during the mid-book battle where the three different groups of people were all trying to kill each other and Kaladin was good friends with all of them, I thought that was a really powerful scene. And so many books like this are like, we need to fight and kill people because those people are just 100% evil and we need to destroy them. And this book, there is still lots of battle and lots of yay fighting happening in it, but we're understanding that killing people is probably not a good thing. And even if you have to do it to defend yourself or your homeland, it's still really, really best if we can avoid it. And it's a nice step in the right direction. So many fantasy books really, really glorify all kinds of violence and killing and horrible murders for no reason. And this seemed like it was really trying to put that into perspective and say, hey, being a soldier fighting in battle is really not desirable and we should try to avoid it if at all possible. I thought it was really fascinating to spend time in Shadesmar. I had pictured it in my head as being this very kind of ethereal, concept-based place. So it was so interesting to see that the Spren there live just like regular people, and they sail ships and they sell things and they eat food, and it all felt much more concrete and much more grounded than I expected it to. So that was really interesting. Shallan fascinated me in this book. She's kind of splitting into three distinct people so that Radiance and Veil are not just facets of Shallan. They're really feeling more and more like their own people. And you can see she's losing her grip. They start to pop up when she doesn't want them to, and they start to take control when she doesn't want them to. And the way that her love life worked in this book was so fascinating to me because it felt for most of the book like Brandon Sanderson wanted her to end up with Kaladin and was really pushing for that. And Veil definitely prefers Kaladin, and Veil would enjoy being romantically involved with him. But you didn't get the feeling Shallan did, even though when Veil was more incorporated into her being, Shallan did. And then at the end of the book, she chose Adolin. And I always liked Adolin best for Shallan. Brandon Sanderson made several comments that sort of implied that Kaladin was the witty, interesting one, and Adolin was the sweet but stupid one. And I didn't get that from the actions in the book at all. So then I was kind of shocked when she did end up picking Adolin, and you see her leaving for her wedding. We don't know if it actually happened. Maybe something will happen in the next 10 minutes before the next book starts and they won't get married, or they'll get divorced, something will happen. But I liked Shallan and Adolin together, and just Shallan only, I like her and Adolin. it seems like Vale does not like him, and Radiant doesn't really have emotions, so she would choose whoever is most practical. I almost wonder if Shallan will be able to manifest her other personalities, and Vale will become another living, breathing person, and she and Kaladin will run off together or something. Like, I was very confused by the messages we were getting. I'm unclear on what Shallan actually wants and on how much of Vale and Radiant are actually part of Shallan and how much they have fractured away from her and are just becoming beings that she created but are not actually her anymore. I was very intrigued by Renarin in this book. Everyone has overlooked him. He's always this side character. And this whole time, his spren wasn't one of the positive good spren. It was a corrupted odium spren. But that didn't mean that Renarin has to be corrupted. And so I'm really, really fascinated to see what his journey is. We had that vision where we know that odium can't really see anything related to Renarin because he's kind of like blazing his own path, and I really, really hope we get more of him in the upcoming books. I loved watching Szeth and Lift in this book. They both had kind of minor parts in it, but it was just so much fun to watch them, especially when they were together, just kind of working in the battle scene, which was actually a really enjoyable battle scene. I tend to tune a lot of battle scenes out, and I paid attention to like 85% of this one, so it was really fun to watch. Lots of like action that you could follow, and you could see who was doing what and where, and I really liked their kind of banter and all the fun that they had during the battle. I loved seeing Szeth pledge to Dalinar. I felt like that was such a great setup, the way they did all of that. That was so much fun. And then Taravangian is just, wow. I mean, you go through this whole thing, you know he doesn't actually want bad things to happen, but he's not going to try to fight Odium. He's going to try to just give up the world. And you feel like he's the villain, and as this whole book goes on, you see him like empathizing with Dalinar, and then he opens up to Dalinar, but we realize that's because Dalinar and Szeth have met, so Szeth was going to tell Dalinar anyway, so, you know, he didn't really have a choice to open up to him, and we're thinking, oh, okay, he might actually try to do something good, and then he makes a deal to just give the world to Odium in exchange for his small kingdom. So now this whole diagram, which is getting more and more flawed, so it's not an actual predictor of the future, but it still knows lots and lots of things. This whole diagram will be actively working against the world now. So that is going to be crazy. I am also unclear, Odium agreed to a battle, and he wanted Dalinar to be his champion, and Dalinar was able to say no, but Odium still agreed to a battle between champions, so doesn't that kind of have to happen at some point? Or since he didn't set a timeline, he can just do it whenever? I'm not really sure. So I'm excited to read the next books going forward. I hope that they move a little bit faster than this one, but I want to see what happens next with all of our characters.